All right, so yes, we come back, of course, with the living legend of North Brunswick basketball himself, Ed Breheney. Actually, I will play this for Coach because I don't think he's ever heard it. He actually did it for me, but I will play it for him so he can hear it himself and hear how he sounds.
This is head coach Ed Breheney from North Brunswick High School. Join the legend Corbett Thompson listening to North Brunswick Raider basketball on the King James Radio Network.
Now, I have to correct Coach Breheney. The true legend here is sitting right here to my left. I just sit here and talk for an hour and a half, about what the guys are doing. But Coach, um, I know. Well, I'll start with the game tonight. Uh, it just seemed like nothing went right. Lonnie got into foul trouble. Um, couldn't hit shots. It just seemed like it was more just nothing went right as opposed to what South Brunswick did. Kind of take me through the first few minutes of the game and what you were trying to establish.
Yeah, we fell into a little bit of a problem with going back to some of our patterns from the South River game. I was getting the game started on a good footnote, and like you said, we got a couple of good looks at the basket early, and South Brunswick hit us with two set plays, a backdoor play on the first possession, and a second set play that was a different wrinkle from what they had been running, to tell you the truth. And credit to their staff, that got them up quick 4-0, and we thought we had stabilized a little bit when we were down 8 or 9, but then they went on another run, and it got a little bit out of hand by the end of the first quarter.
Obviously, Alani getting into some early foul trouble there. I'm sure that hurt a lot. And then Frankie getting a couple of fouls, and then Jack getting a couple of fouls. Was it just trying to be aggressive and trying to get back in the game?
I think that's a tendency sometimes with the young fellas. You remember these are high school kids. They think they're going to go and score a 10-point basket when you're down 10, instead of just taking what the defense gives you and try to whittle away that way. I think it was just in our part trying to do too much individually, and that's something we fall into sometimes, as opposed to maybe a 5-pass possession.
In terms of, I want to go back to the beginning in 1989 when you came here, and you had 10 wins at Sayreville in the 3 years you were there, and then you come here. So I'm curious to know, what was it that ultimately got you the job? You mentioned when I talked to you before GMCs that someone was nice enough to take a chance on you. So I want to know what do you think won everybody over to give you the job?
Well, the one thing I will correct you, it was only 2 years at Sayreville.
2 years, okay.
2 years. So the 10 wins in 3 years would have been really bad.
But okay. I'm sorry. Yes, 10, I don't want to short you.
10 in 2 years was good, was tough enough. But I basically at my tenure at Sayreville, they had a situation where all of the non-tenured phys ed teachers were let go. So it was I got go. I got the notice in April of '83, and June of '83 I was getting married. So it was not a good situation in being unemployed and a newlywed. And I was through a couple of tough months all the way to November, and I saw an ad in the paper that North Brunswick was hiring a phys ed supervisor. So on a chance that they would hire somebody from their staff, I put an application. That's exactly what happened. The great Steve Libro was made the phys ed supervisor. I was able to get his teaching job. At that point, I coached under Coach John Franson as a JV coach, and then Coach Pete Clark as a JV coach. And those guys, laid the basis for the program. And then, luckily for me, Pete got a opportunity to go in administration, and as an assistant coach, I took over the job in '89-90 season.
It's amazing the times we're in now where back then of course you fill out a paper application and you wait for your phone call and your interview, and nowadays everything's done computer or phone or whatever, and so it's amazing. But from there it seems like, I guess from there is when your fortunes turned, and going leading up to the 1997 team. So those first few years, what was that like, trying to establish the program?
It was great. Coach Clark had really set a good foundation, I thought, and I was able to take it to the next level. Whereas those days, North Brunswick making the state tournament was a real accomplishment, which we were able to do our first year. '89-90 was a very special thing for the kids as a goal they made, and '90-91 still sticks with me. We got to the sectional final. We were down by one. Against North Hunterdon, and I'm over it now, but we had 3 shots in the last 3 seconds. The ball hung on the rim and fell off. But once as a head coach, now all of a sudden now you're not looked at as that 10-win coach. You just went to the States in a sectional final in your first 2 years, and I think it gives you some credibility with the kids coming out, and they know that they're playing in a program that's going to be a solid program.
70-69 to North Hunterdon in 1991. Yeah, so you said you're over it now, so
Yeah.
I'll leave it there. But and then you fast forward to 1997 and the GMC Championship team that gets a lot of gets a lot of attention with Raheem Byram, who's with you now, and Steve Bridgman and Tim Howard and Dave McCracken. And so Coach Z, he mentioned those guys too at halftime when I had him up here. Obviously, the pinnacle, if you will, of what you try to do, beyond winning the championship itself. I guess, was there a life lesson there, in reaching the top?
I thought one of our things that we've always been proud of, and it continues to this day, in this day of specialization, we've always had players from different sports come out and play basketball. Of course, Tim with soccer, John Sipot, Dave McCracken, Dave Stringer, Raheem, all from the football
team. Yeah, let
me
not forget John Sipot. He'll kill me.
Yes, make sure you get John in there.
Yeah.
And I think, that's something that made us a little bit unique. I've always stressed to kids, you're in high school once, try to get as much, fun out of it as you can. And so I think you see, the great effect our football players have for us in basketball. So I think, coming out of those years, 97, again, coming back in 98 with a really strong team, that those are obviously special memories, and it continue today. I'm in touch with all those guys to this day, which is great.
Most of the guys on that banner there, the 1,000 Point Club, were with you. From Derek Scott all the way through.
Yeah, Shaheed Williams was here tonight, actually. Shaheed stopped by, said hello.
Oh, yes. I noticed you had a lot of alumni, a lot of friends and a family here. And so what does it mean, to know that, when you see the majority of those names up there, that you had something to do with it?
Well, there's an old saying, if you stay in the same gym long enough, the right players walk in. And we've had them walk in a lot more often than some other places. The thing about all those guys is, they were associated with winning, and, the point total sort of came upon themselves, and, there's also kids like Jabri Fitzpatrick who would be up there if we didn't have a COVID season.
That's true.
And it's just, I'll be teaching phys ed class sometimes, and once in a while I'll look up there and just get showered with some memories of some of the great things that those kids did.
The 3 division championships, I'll fast forward a little to 2011, 2012, 2013, the 3 division titles. How big was that for you? You had Iverson Fleming, you had Deion Rogers, and that entire Virgil Boykin and that whole group, Dennis Ford, Chance Gatson. So kind of take me through that division title run.
Well, it started with Deion. He's as a 7th or 8th grader, he started playing with us in summer leagues, and we couldn't wait to get him here at the high school. And he was a great scorer, an unselfish guy. And shout out to Shalik Short from those games. He's trying to overcome some physical difficulties right now. We'd love to see him. And then, of course, Iverson. That had to be one of the best backcourts in the state, in my opinion, at that time. And, we took St. Joe's down to the last few minutes, lost by 5 in that final. But, that was, the only reward that I got after they left is they moved us to the red division.
Yes.
Well, so I kid around. I go, thanks a lot for that, guys. 3 great division titles. And then they left on us.
Yes. And obviously there's ebb and flow, and there's up and there's down. How do you navigate it? How do you, and you mentioned after that there were a couple of years where, there might have been a couple of down years. So how do you navigate the ebb and flow of it?
It's all about a support system, starting with my wife and daughter. I live quite a distance away, and they get home late at night, so they've always been supportive and never questioned the hours put in at practice and stuff. And of course, the assistant coaches and the support staff there. No one could do that without a great support staff. You hear things about coaches burning out, and I was able not to burn out because I had a lot of support.
It seems like every game that I see you at, you're moving pretty much 70 miles an hour, and so I was going to ask you. You said you don't burn out. So where does that come from? Where does that enthusiasm, even 3.5 decades later, where does that enthusiasm come from?
I think it comes from not being a great player. I always had to do the little extra things to stay on the court. I played with some really good teams with good players, but I always had a little bit of that underdog mentality, wishing I was. All the hours I spent in basketball, I would have been a better player, but I had the ability that I was given, and that was it.
Did you play high school in New Jersey? Or?
Roseville Catholic.
Roseville Catholic. Yes. And by the way, I'm curious to know. I've never asked you this. The touchdown call, where you yelled touchdown and they tapped the floor. Where did that start?
That's from a fellow named Tommy Handwork who coached in Point Pleasant where I live, and I saw his team do that, and everybody always seemed to get a defensive stop when they did it at big times in the game. Just try to remind the kids to stay low, get in a stance, and get infections. And over the years, didn't have to be me to yell it. Sometimes we've had players on the bench yell it, and shows that they're into the game also. So.
Talking with head coach Ed Breheney in his final game, and again as the South Brunswick wins to move on to the Central Jersey Group 4 semifinals. So this is it for coach, and I assume you're going to be here the rest of the school year.
Yeah, I got a big golf season coming up, and we're here through June teaching.
Yep. And I'm glad to see that everything was okay, because the time that I've known you since 2005. I don't ever remember you missing a game, and so I'm glad to know that nothing tragic happened and that you're all right. So
appreciate that.
Yeah. So I imagine you mentioned the hours that you put in and the dedication that it takes to be here each and every night for practice or each and every game. Do you wish some days that you cut it back a little bit and focus more on other things, or no regrets?
No regrets. I was able to get. My daughter was a track athlete in high school and a crew athlete at Lafayette College. So I was with that. A lot of that stuff was in the fall. I was able to get. Once I stopped doing football, I was able to get. That was a big move for me to spend more family time. I was able to catch a lot of her stuff in high school and in college. So we were able to balance it. And there were days when I said my assistants had broad shoulders and took over a lot.
Talk about your assistants for a minute. Michael Herman, Raheem Byram, John Sook, your brother Jim. Your assistants that have been with you for together for a few years now, and how you mentioned the support. How much have they helped you get through this latter part of your career?
Yeah, I've talked to them, especially the last few weeks, and then to me, obviously, my physical brother, but the other guys are almost like a brotherhood to me. That we share a lot with our families. It's not just a working relationship; it's a caring relationship. We look out for each other on and off the court, and I've been very fortunate. You go back, you think of I don't want to say them all from Coach Zielinski, Coach Andrew Theokas, Michael Theokas. I've had true friends that have been on my staff. Hasn't been somebody. We joke around about Tim Huber. He was one of the few guys that I didn't know. And when he came in, he became one of our closest friends also. I said, "Who's this guy Huber?" And within a month, we were as tight as could be. So the man upstairs, sent me some good help. That's for sure.
Tim Huber, now an assistant coach at New Brunswick, JV coach with Antoine Allen over there in New Brunswick. As far as Coach Byram, Raheem Byram, he played for you and now coaches with you. And he was talking to me a few days ago about everything that you've poured into him, the knowledge and everything that you poured into him. So is that kind of a special relationship, especially him having played for you?
Oh, it's he's like my right arm. He think the same way. Before I can say it, he's already saying it. As a player, he was that way. The point guard, he was a coach on the floor, and the powers that be will make the decision. But I would hope and pray that Raheem would get an opportunity here as the next head coach.
So I'm sure that will go a long way. Like you said, the school board will ultimately decide that, but I'm sure your influence will carry, I would think, some weight. But a couple more here for Ed Breheney. Did you expect this year to go as well as it did? I was talking with Frankie, Garbolino before the season, and he said we're going to be better than some people think. And so when he said that, I'm thinking, okay, 500, maybe a game over, a couple of games over, but 21 wins. So was that, something that you planned for?
Well, we were disappointed last year to not even qualify for the state tournament. Basketballs got put away rather early last year, and we didn't feel good about that. And obviously the addition of Alani helped a lot, and not only his basketball skill, but his presence that he brought. After opening night, the tough loss we had to South Plainfield, he knocks on my office door and says, "We're not losing again." So you hear I say that, and then we went on quite a run after a couple of runs during the season. It was just a 7 or 8 game winning streak. So we did lose again, but that was the kind of attitude he had after the first game. So when I heard people talk like that, I thought we had a chance to do some of the good things we did.
Yeah, and the group of seniors with Alani and Frankie and Jameer. Jameer 7 3-pointers against Old Bridge.
Awesome.
The group of seniors, along with Brandon McCain, who a couple of game-winning baskets this year, one with Franklin, and then more recently with Princeton. So you never know how ingredients mix, but I assume you had to like the combinations this year.
I did. Early on we had the injury with Tommy Karoma's ankle, and have R.J. Hill step in for a 6 or 7 game stretch as a guard, and have Tommy come back fully healthy, and you know, they go to R.J. and Jameer off the bench, and there were times this year you mentioned Jameer, and some of our bench players really gave us a lift, and even the guys in practice, guys like Andrew Kaprowski, Tim Balaji, just making the starters work hard in practice, and try to stress to them what an important part of this they are, because they're very important to the team.
You mentioned that you don't live around here, so when what's next for you as far as you're gonna watch the games next year on the NFHS network there?
Yeah.
You computer savvy?
Yeah. What the hell, my wife? I can watch some games. When first we got golf season and a little beach season down at Point Pleasant, so relax. And I'll certainly be checking these guys out, hoping the best for them, and figuring out my next move employment wise. I'll do something part time to stay busy.
I was gonna say I didn't know if you wanted to go to Florida. If you're gonna go to Florida and you're gonna from one Mets fan to another, if you're gonna hang out in Port St. Lucie, let me know. I'll stop by and we'll get a couple of tickets and go to a couple of spring training
my
games.
My wife just put new siding and new windows in the house, so I think we're staying for a while.
I understand. I'm married 17 years. I understand. My last question then is, did you ever picture at any time in the 34 years, what I talked to you about this in the past, but what you would do, what you would have done without basketball? Maybe a computer salesman. What would you have done?
I took a test one time back when we were in college. It was an occupational test, and they said something that's always interested me is actually marketing. And I always wonder why you reach for the red can of soup and I reach for the blue can of soup, and how that gets ingrained in your head.
Interesting.
So I actually one of the opportunities I might have is to maybe work with the Northeast Conference and some marketing for some of the schools. That's
nice.
That's in the preliminary talk, but they're centered over here in Somerset, and I had some talks with them. I'd like to do something maybe in marketing or in college admissions, which I would also be something that would interest me.
Nice. Now, I assume, and speaking of which, as far as college coaches come, I'm sure you've had plenty of conversations with college coaches about different players. What's the number one thing that they ask you about when it comes to a player?
How hard does he play? How hard does he play? What kind of teammate is he? Their eyes can see the physical skill, but they want to know what's he like when nobody's looking. What's he like in the mundane things in practice. And you think about the great ones. You think about Tim Howard. He won every sprint. Okay, some of the great players. Dion won every sprint. When your best players are your hardest workers, like they were this year, you have a good season.
And I got a chance to observe, kind of a father-son moment there with RJ over there after he got the tech, and I won't ask you what you told him, but I'm sure that's the type of relationship that a coach would like to have with his players. That almost that father-son, to have that influence, type of thing. So,
it was just a moment we had. We actually have players that really, really care about the results of what's going on, and they care sometimes so much that you look at your last game as a high school player. Some frustration came in. I just wanted to let him know that there were people watching him, and he should proceed to the end of the game without really exhibiting. You feel frustration. You don't have to exhibit it all the time. So.
And to piggyback off of that, do you feel like these guys are your kids? Even though they don't live with you and you don't have to, you don't have to feed them or anything necessarily.
Yes, you spend a lot of time with them. You hope that they learn more than basketball. That they learn some things, lessons for life that they can take forward. And I think the games we play provide that for them. So when kids come back and visit, which they do often, they don't remember if you were 16-10 or 15-9. They remember more the good times that they had, and then the bonding with your teammates. So, after this thing of this loss goes away, I have to try those guys to look at it that way.
Now, when you walk out of here for the final time in June or whenever that may be, are you picking up a basketball and trying to shoot it from half court? Anything special or?
I got a couple months to figure that out, but I usually have a pretty good flair for the dramatics, so we'll come up with something.
All right. When nobody's watching,
Yeah,
but my last question, do you what was I going to say? My last question was, do you think that high school basketball as a whole has changed for the better in the time that you've been around?
It's an interesting question. And I could go on quite a bit about it. As high school coaches, for whatever reason, we've let a lot of things go to the AAU level, uh, for a variety of reasons. Not really anyone's fault. Whereas with football, all of college recruiting, there is no real AAU football yet. So football is more uh, recruiters coming through the school. Here, we have to fight some of the things, good and bad habits that they pick up at AAU, and not to talk down AAU basketball, but it's definitely different with the stress on that. We deal a lot less with actual recruiting. We just try to make sure the kids' grades are good, and we're not as involved in that anymore. So I like to see the high school coaches get a little more control of what's going on, and but we'll see. AAU basketball has some benefits, but sometimes it can get a little bit out of control.
Coach, it's been a pleasure. Very much appreciate the time that you worked with me, the emails, and I remember one email you sent in particular that said you can't retire before I do. So I'm still here, So
And I'll be tuned in next year listening to you.
oh, thank you, thank you. I appreciate it, and good luck with everything. And anytime you want to drop me a line, please do.
Let's go Mets.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
Take care.
Head coach Ed Breheney.